Hi everyone. It's Vicky here from BlueSky PR. Just waiting for my colleague Dan to join us. Hope everybody's well. Hope everyone's coping. At least the sun's out today. It means that we can at least enjoy ourselves while we're at home. My colleague Dan will be joining us shortly to join in with the conversation and pose some of the questions that we've had people asking over the last couple of days and hours as well. Just let him join now. Hi, Dan. I can hear you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me again. You're probably getting fed up of talking to me all the time now, Dan. That's where we talk in the office.
I know.
So I was just welcoming everyone. We've got quite a few people joining at the moment, and I think we've had a couple of questions that we've had posted over the weekend. And before we go sort of into any of the questions, I just wanted to give a bit of overview for everyone listening as to the topic and why we're focusing on this topic for this week. So essentially, we wanted to focus on the future of recruitment PR and recruitment marketing for this particular Q&A. And the reason that this topic kind of emerged is just purely based on the conversations we've been having with current clients and those within the recruitment field. Where I kind of feel like we've now hit a stage where we've turned a tide and we're all actually talking about the future and something positive, which, you know, is at last is kind of my point of view on that. And all of our clients are now sort of really asking us, what do we do now for the future? What do we need to plan for our PR and marketing for the future? Because I think we had that, and Dan, I'm sure you'll agree, but let me know if you have any other views. But I think when all of lockdown happened 40, 50 odd days ago, everyone panicked, and we kind of had a period of crisis communications that really took place. But since then, we've kind of now got to a point where I think people are looking forward at the future. So people are beginning to panic less and actually start to plan again, which is certainly encouraging from my point of view. And it's just nice to see people sort of looking forward at long last. And you know, and I think I'll cover off everyone's questions. But if there's anything that I think, you know, anyone's questions haven't covered based on the conversations we've been having, I'll certainly bring those up at the end. But I mean, Dan, we've had a few tweets, haven't we? So do you want to kick off with some of the questions?
Yeah, sure. So again, I just want to echo what you've said. Really, I think it's great, really, to see in the last couple of weeks, certainly, that a lot of agencies are now sort of mapping out the coming weeks and months, which is fantastic to sort of finally sort of see that shift. And obviously, that's going to benefit everybody really well. So yeah, I want to start off. We've had the direct message come in yesterday, and it says, with things changing so quickly, is there any point scheduling anything or planning any content for the future?
Okay, that's an interesting one. I think, you know, a couple of thoughts on that. First and foremost, you know, we spoke at the beginning of all of this about, you know, with anything that's being scheduled, that you do need to constantly review what you have scheduled, because I think when this first kicked off, a number of agencies forgot about some of like with their social posts, for example, some of the bits and pieces they had scheduled, and there were a few posts that we wouldn't have advised sharing in the current economic climate. So, you know, I think, you know, scheduling stuff you need to review and take with a pinch of salt, because you know, what you schedule now might perhaps be irrelevant in a week's time if you're talking about latest news and up-to-date information. But that doesn't mean that you can't schedule anything at all and you can't plan anything at all. I think, you know, in order to keep content being pushed out, you do need to have some form of plan, something scheduled, and there is what we call evergreen content that you can certainly utilize. And as a case in point, I think, you know, if you are working with, let's take an industry. So if you're working with within financial services and you're targeting entry level candidates, for example, the career advice that you'd give them isn't going to change massively at the moment in terms of how they can get the next job. So there may be certain tips and advice that you can be pushing out as content for that particular audience, because it won't change as much. You're not going to perhaps set yourself up for some queries as to why you're talking about something you shouldn't in this economy. As a case in point, you could even have a blog and some social media content going out about utilizing and making the most out of video interviews, because that type of information isn't going to go out of date at this time anyway, that's for sure. But at the moment, that's not going to be impacted by what's happening across the economy, because people are still going to be looking for jobs. And there's even some topics you can use for client-facing stuff as well. So even if things are a bit negative in your industry, there are some advice pieces that you can be pushing out. So, just how to maintain engagement with your audiences, for example, is broad enough to sort of engage people, but also limit any newsworthy stuff that could change. So you can keep pushing content out, and you can schedule stuff still. So I'd advise doing it. I wouldn't say completely switch off scheduling anything, because you'll find then that there'll be a dip in activity and a lull here and there where you've perhaps forgotten to share some posts, and that's going to go against your favor. So I would definitely advise scheduling it, but think carefully about what you're scheduling anytime you schedule anything, and just make sure you review it regularly, just so that you're not pushing anything out that's no longer relevant. Would you agree with all of that, Dan?
I would, and again, I think context is key for evergreen content. You can always put at the beginning of a tweet or a LinkedIn post, for example, saying, we wrote this 4 months ago, but this advice is even more important now given what's going on. Again, just that context can help shape it, because sometimes if people just click straight into the blog post and they can see it was X amount of months ago, just setting that context initially helps draw people in, and they can understand that content a lot more. So definitely always advise putting a bit of context within the post that leads people to there.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, actually, Dan. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, and we've got a second direct message come through yesterday as well on the afternoon, and it says, the data I have shows there's a huge drop in hiring across the sector I work with. Should I do anything with this information?
Okay, that's a fun one to answer. And we work with a number of companies who push out a lot of hiring data. So we have addressed this question quite a few times before. I think a year ago, companies that had hiring data that showed vacancies were dropping in their sector, people would have just been reluctant to push it out, because obviously that's your business, that all you're doing is saying that there is no business for your company at the moment. So a year ago, yes, I can understand why people wouldn't want to do anything with that data. But I think in times of crisis like this, it's actually valuable to share that information, because everybody's being realistic about the environment at the moment, and when you're thinking about your recruitment marketing activity, pushing messages out that are all trying to be positive or just ignore what's going on in the industry and in the economy, it's not going to be useful, and actually you'll probably just get laughed out the door. But if you have the data that does show that yes, hiring has dropped, it's information that I think people will be interested in hearing at this particular time, just to get an actual idea of how bad the situation is, how much things have changed. But in order to make sure that you are getting something positive out there, I think agencies need to be looking at the data and then saying, okay, hiring has dipped significantly in the last 2 weeks, but looking forward, we expect X, Y, or Z. And if we take construction, for example, at the beginning of all of this, hiring completely dropped for understandable reasons, because projects were shut down across the UK. But now that Boris Johnson's allowed construction to begin again in the UK, there's been an uptick in hiring. So a couple of weeks ago, if you were a construction recruiter and you noted that vacancies were continuously dropping, reporting that is absolutely fine, because everyone understands that is the case. But showing that you have access to that data shows that you have the insights and the connections that are valuable to employers and to candidates. But if a few weeks ago you were sharing that information and then saying, however, once the bounce back does happen, there's going to be an uptick. We predict there'll be an uptick in demand for X, Y, and Z professionals as the UK tries to get back to work. Sharing that insight, then when that does happen, if you can say, well, we predicted 2 weeks ago that this would happen, it just really stands you out to the crowd, and it shows everyone, not only do you have the data to inform what is currently happening, whether it's negative or positive, but it also shows that you have that knowledge and expertise to be able to say, but this is going to pick up at some point, and this is going to happen with, we expect these trends to happen, et cetera, et cetera. And it just keeps you front of mind. I know people can be reluctant to share negatives when it comes to hiring data, but as I said, we're all realists. We all expect certain areas to drop. It's not like it's just one sector that's suffering, it's every sector. So now is the time to actually share that, but supplement it with that, that forward thinking insight.
Thank you very much, Vicky. That's some really good advice there. And again, I'd just like to add as well, I've certainly seen a few agencies over the past fortnight as well putting out, data about research, figures falling in certain sectors. And again, they've sort of moved some of their messaging across from just general, this is fallen, but they've also gone on to aspects such as employee retention, employee engagement aspects as well, just to show that they have got a clear understanding of the market and have experience in other areas of the recruitment and HR sector as well. So again, you can always just broaden your knowledge a little bit and just show that you've got expertise in those areas as well.
Yeah, very good point.
So the next question we've just got in as well is, I've seen the trends information being released by the likes of AppSco and have been sharing it on my personal channels such as LinkedIn. Is there anything else I should be doing with this?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's so much data being pushed out by various people at the moment that, as I mentioned a minute ago, there's, we work with a number of clients that have data that they push out, and sharing that information that you're privy to is certainly advisable. But if you look at how many people are sharing stuff online, everyone's doing it at the moment, and where there's some really good data. I mean, AppSco's data is fantastic, but where there's data, there's going to be a lot of people sharing it. And I know that AppSco's data does get shared far and wide. I think to add real value, and that's what ideally you want for your agency and for your marketing activity, is to add value to the reader. Just sharing or just liking what somebody else says doesn't stand you out too much, because essentially they could get that same information from the source themselves. What I would highly recommend doing is commenting on the data or commenting on the information and what your views are. Are your conversations mirroring that insight that the likes of AppSco are pushing out, for example? Do you agree? What do you think? Again, going back to that whole forward thinking topic, what do you think will happen to these trends in the future? I think that's where you'll add real value as an expert. And when you're sharing stuff as well, it's, I think, I don't know the ins and outs of the person who's asked this, but if you're sharing it as a person, that's fantastic. But don't forget to share and comment as a business as well, so that you've got both the company that you work for and yourself. And obviously, if you're the marketer, I'd expect that being done anyway in an agency. But make sure that the whole team are sharing and commenting on this insight. If you've got consultants who aren't on furlough, for example, and are actively hiring people, placing people at the moment, get them to share that data and say, you could even do a bit of a plug and sort of say, we absolutely agree with this. We've seen a real uptick in demand for X type of professionals. In fact, we've had these roles as our highlighted roles of the week, or whatever. That kind of insight and conversation, and joining that conversation will add a lot of value to your readers. And again, it's just another way of showing people that the industry that you operate in inside and out, and that you're not just relying on somebody else's data. Yes, they may have published that themselves, but the sentiment from the people you're speaking to. So share that information and drive that conversation. And I'm not just talking here about social media posts. So I think it's important to share this as well, that when you have access to data that you find particularly interesting, and the only reason you'd like or share anything is if you find it interesting, share your thoughts on your blog. You've got a chance there to really expand on your experience of and your viewpoint on what the data is showing at the moment. And do you know what, if you disagree, say that and say why you disagree. Obviously make sure that you've got the support and the insight to back up your claims, but use the likes of a blog to really put your point of view across, because it gives you that chance to give your readers and your audience and anyone visiting your website some information and insight into who you are and what you know, but also your response to what's going on in the industry at the moment. And always remember, when you're pushing anything like this out or sharing anything, that you've got to give the reader something different. If you are just giving them what they can find elsewhere, they won't come back to you again. But if you are giving them something that they can only get from you, you're going to get people coming back again. You're going to get people engaging with you, and that's ultimately what you want for any marketing and comms that you're pushing out at the moment.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Some great advice there. And we've got another question coming, which is, what is your advice when it comes to creating a future-proof recruitment marketing plan in this environment?
Okay, that one's quite a tricky one to answer. But that's what we're doing at the moment with our clients, is trying to create future-proof strategies. There's a couple of pieces of advice that I would give here. The first is that you can create a strategy. It's going to be tough at the moment because things are changing so quickly. But just because things will need to change quickly and need to adapt, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't plan. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have a strategy, because if you don't have those in place, you're setting yourselves up for failure, essentially, because in 3 months' time, you might look back and say, okay, what were we trying to do with our marketing, and what were we trying to do with our PR over the last 3 months? If you haven't planned, you don't know what you were trying to do, and you don't know if you've hit your goals and achieved your goals, and if you've done everything you needed to have done. So, you can plan and you can develop a strategy, and I absolutely would advise that you do that. But to make sure that it's future-proof, essentially the main point is to evaluate it regularly and review it regularly. Weekly, at least, you need to be looking at what you've got scheduled, what you've got planned, what advertorial you've got, what comms you're pushing out, what research you're doing, and monitoring the news agenda and adjusting any of your plans accordingly. So if there is breaking news about lockdowns being lifted or eased across the globe that is relevant to your market, you need to then change your comms strategy accordingly, because you need to be getting a reaction out straight away, and then anything you've been had in the pipeline for that particular field or geography is going to change. So making sure that you are reviewing these things regularly is crucial to really develop a future-proof plan. And I think that's not just in times of crisis either. I think that once we come out the other side of all of this, we'll see more people, more agencies actually setting up recruitment marketing strategies that they do review regularly, because I think more of us will understand why that's important, and why that needs to be done. So I hope that does change long term. My other piece of advice would be to have one person to really own the strategy, because there's no way you can really monitor what needs to be changed in any plans that you've developed unless you have one person who is solely responsible for it. We've seen it quite a few times where there's maybe 5 or 6 different people involved in pushing out a particular marketing or comms plan. And the problem with that is that one slight miscommunication could mean that something doesn't actually happen. So, you may have a team of 5, but someone might be sitting there thinking, oh, it's okay. Bob over there is responsible for this, and Jane over there is responsible for this, so I won't do anything. Bob and Jane don't know that, so nobody does what should be done. Nobody changes their social media posts that are scheduled, for example, or where you've got blog topics developed. Nobody tells the consultants that actually you're going to change the focus for the month because of what's happened in the in the economy or whatever. You need to have one person who is solely responsible for it, who then delegates accordingly. Otherwise, things will be missed. So whether that be a marketing person, if you have one, or whether that be sort of the CEO or a very senior member of the team who's got some experience in marketing and comms at least. It doesn't matter who it is, as long as one person can really direct everybody and make sure that the plans are pushed through and managed and adapted. I think that's really it in terms of advice. I think, I would definitely say speak to others, find out what others are doing, and maybe seek expert advice, because that's, very broad advice from me, but every agency is different, every situation is different, and you could have a team of 4, you could have a team of 400, you could have a team of 4,000, and what your strategy looks like that is going to work now and in the future is going to be completely different depending on the size of your business and the the industries that you operate within. Do you have anything you could throw in there, Dan, at all?
I was just going to echo your point, actually, in terms of having a person who is in charge of sort of the sole ownership, if you like, of the recruitment marketing, because that's something I frequently find out when I speak to other recruitment marketers, that they do struggle because they don't have that one person who's in charge of everything. Because if you want a fully cohesive and integrated approach to your recruitment marketing, you need to make sure that whether it's your website, email marketing campaigns, social, and even offline stuff in terms of brochures and stuff, that one person oversees all of that to a certain degree, because otherwise you're just going to have silos in the process, you're going to have hurdles, and things just don't get done. If you have that one person who oversees that and makes sure that everything is integrated with one another, you really have a successful approach. We can really measure your results and set KPIs that you achieve. Otherwise, if you don't have that, then it is really, really hard to be successful in recruitment marketing.
Yeah, no, absolutely, very true. Brilliant. Have we got any more questions that have come in, Dan?
That is the last one, it looks like.
Okay, fab. I just want to finish off really with one thing that I mentioned at the beginning of this, that we've had quite a few interesting conversations about planning for the future, and one of the questions that does crop up quite a lot with our clients, and it might just be because we have those close relationships with them that they feel comfortable asking this, and people might not perhaps want to put this publicly on Twitter, but we've had a lot of people say to us, is it too early to start planning for the future? And I just want to kind of end with the point that it's never too early to start planning for the future, no matter what crisis we're going through, no matter what the economy is doing. I think we need to start looking forward and start planning for what's going to happen in a month, 3 months, 6 months, and even next year, because we're going to get to the other side of this at some point. What the world of work and recruitment will look like is kind of most people's guess at the moment, but we need to start looking forward rather than focusing on just the here and now, so that we can help everybody get through to the other side of this. And I think a little bit of positivity goes a long way. So simply talking about what's going to happen in 3 to 6 months time is going to help people just start to see the light at the end of the tunnel and start realizing that actually there's an end to this at some point. So I mean, that's my final point on sort of the future, I guess, at the moment. But we'll be hosting another one of these in 2 weeks' time. Follow us all on Twitter for the latest posts and updates on this. I'm on @VickyCollinge if you want to follow me. Dan, yours is on the screen at the moment, so if you don't follow Dan already, I follow. He has some very interesting thoughts and advice on social media. He's our head of social media, so he's always pushing out some brilliant tips and advice to people. So if you don't follow him already, please do so. And that's everything from me, and I'll see you all next time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Dan. I'll speak soon.